Discover the hidden truth. A single dad's blind date with an inspiring CEO takes an unexpected turn. Jake sat stiffly across from Sarah in the small diner, the flickering neon sign casting a tired glow around them. At 38, he'd exchanged lesson plans for late-night homework sessions, and the responsibilities of a single dad overshadowed his past life as a high school teacher. Grief, familiar yet heavy, lingered in the corners of his mind. How could he be here, dating after losing Laura? His heart drummed a rhythm of unease, each beat laced with guilt. But there was Sarah, an inspiring CEO with a quiet strength, and he felt an undeniable spark between them. The laughter they shared, a blend of relief and warmth, teased a sense of hope he hadn't felt in years. Yet, as they reminisced about the challenges of raising teenagers alone, a dark cloud loomed in Jake's memories. Would he be forsaking Laura's memory by flirting with happiness? He hesitated, questioning if he should even pursue this connection. Emma was precious, her spirit glowing like a candle amidst the gloom of their life, but could he invite someone else into their lives without risking their precarious bond? The thought gripped him, twisting with fear. He focused on Sarah, buying time. What made her strong enough for familial involvement in his turbulent life? Her bright eyes, a juxtaposition against his swirling doubts, made his heart ache with the weight of indecision. Before they plunged deeper into conversation, a shout interrupting the diner lulled them both into suddenly taut silence. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Jake's mind wandered back. He was about to unravel it all about the job offers teeming like locusts, the acquaintances urging him to connect with his estranged father, Gregory. But each thought provoked a deeper confrontation. His father, toxic and unyielding, was a storm cloud on the horizon, their history suffocating his goals. The legacy he abandoned still echoed, the thought of wealth sprung from a tainted past vibrating against his values. Did he dare tread into those waters? Their conversation resumed, but tension hung in the air. Sarah spoke of overcoming gender biases, her voice steady, filled with ambition. Yet, Jake felt the knife of fear twist deeper within him. Emotions shifted like shadows, and his heart raced whenever he thought of what choosing this path might mean. Would he be sacrificing Emma's innocence and loyalty for desires that might never bear fruit? But within Sarah's presence tickled possibilities, wild hopes he had buried after losing Laura. As he contemplated these spiraling thoughts, the door swung open, and his father stepped into the diner, every muscle in Jake's body tightening. The casual ambience shattered. Jake's heartbeat echoed in his ears, a cacophony of dread and disbelief. He turned to Sarah, her curious gaze meeting his, words of explanation hovering unuttered on his lips. Who was more important? The chance for a new beginning that seemed to shimmer before him, or the painful truths lurking from a past that threatened to unravel everything he fought to protect? He swallowed hard, the taste of uncertainty bitter on his tongue, the choices hanging like blades, ready to cut through the fragile moment they'd just built. The moment Jake locked eyes with his father, a paralyzing wave of anger surged through him, battling for dominance against the guilt and fear that simmered just below the surface. Gregory's weathered face betrayed nothing, just the same indifference that had marred their relationship for as long as Jake could remember. "Jake," Gregory said, approaching their table with an air of casual disregard. Jake felt rooted to the spot, the air thickening around him. Unconsciously, he shifted his body between Sarah and his father, a protective instinct taking over. It was as if he needed to shield the budding connection with Sarah from an impending darkness that threatened to engulf them both. "Are you going to introduce me to your friend?" Gregory continued, a smirk playing at the corners of his lips. "Sarah, this is my father," Jake replied, his voice taut. Sarah offered a polite smile, but he could see the flicker of confusion in her eyes. The informal gathering that had once felt promising now hung by a thread, the unease gnawing at the edges of the evening. "Nice to meet you," she said, her calm demeanor contrasting sharply with Jake's inner turmoil. He didn't want her to feel the weight of his father's presence. "Dating younger women now, are we?" Gregory said, his tone dripping with condescension. Each word landed like a blow, intensifying the storm of emotions swirling inside him. "Leave her out of this," Jake snapped, the anger blazing to life, hot and relentless. Those familiar feelings that had kept him bound to his father washed over him, the need for approval, coupled with the realization that none would ever come. "Then you need to come back home, son. We need to discuss your future." The authority in Gregory's voice was a grim reminder of how control had always shifted away from Jake in their relationship. Jake's heart raced, grappling with the decision before him. If he gave in now, he would be surrendering to the same patterns that had plagued his youth. But if he pushed back, would he be jeopardizing the fragile peace he had fostered for Emma and himself? The idea of re-establishing boundaries felt monumental, the kind of challenge that could lead to personal transformation or disastrous fallout. "I'm not interested in your vision for my life anymore," Jake said, his pulse pounding in his throat. "It's time I start making my own decisions." In that moment, he caught Sarah's gaze, her face reflecting both support and admiration. Something inside him began to shift, the first cracks in the armor he had worn for so long. There was power in this stance, an affirmation of who he was becoming. Gregory's brow furrowed, the veneer of indifference shattering momentarily. "You think you can do it on your own? You need family." "No, I need stability, something you've never been able to provide." The words escaped Jake's lips with raw intensity, decades of frustration boiling over, breaking free like a dam bursting under pressure. Silence enveloped the diner. All eyes were on the three of them. Jake's heart pounded in his chest. He had stirred the pot, igniting a conflict he couldn't fully control. He felt liberated. At the same time, he knew the repercussions could echo well beyond this moment. As the tension remained, Sarah looked at him, a mix of pride and concern swirling in her expression. Jake realized that despite the chaos in their surroundings, he was confronting something monumental. He was choosing the path of autonomy over obligation, risking a fragile relationship with his father for a chance at genuine happiness. But that happiness, still so nascent, felt precarious. Would he push too hard, and would Emma be caught in the crossfire? The tingling uncertainty of his decision lingered in the air like static, charged with implications. Regaining a semblance of composure, he turned back to Sarah, who awaited his next move, silently championing him forward. But his father's presence loomed large, a reminder of battles yet to come. Before Jake could gather his thoughts, Sarah leaned in slightly. "What do you want, Jake?" Her voice pierced through the cacophony of his mind, urging clarity in the wake of turmoil. The question hung heavily. He needed to confront his desires, both for himself and for Emma. Did he want to continue drifting through the shadows of the past, or risk the journey towards something fulfilling and real? Amidst the brewing storm, Jake realized the choice was his to make. He drew a deep breath, ready to articulate his truth. Yet, before he could respond, the diner door swung open again, revealing the last person he expected to see, the one who could shatter this fragile moment completely. Jake's stomach twisted as he turned to face the newcomer. It was Emma's mother, Claire, her presence a tumultuous mix of shock and recognition. The air in the diner thickened, the tension rising to an unbearable crescendo. The last person Jake wanted in this moment was Claire. The casual Sunday evening had turned into an unexpected arena of confrontation. "Jake?" Claire's voice betrayed a hint of astonishment, her eyes flicking between him and Gregory. "What are you doing here?" "Just having dinner," he replied, fighting to keep his tone neutral, aware of the chaos brewing within him. He could feel Sarah's apprehension beside him, silently pleading with him to take control of the situation. As Claire approached, Jake caught a glimpse of her guarded expression. The very essence of their past lay between them like a chasm, filled with unresolved issues and hurt. Every encounter had been an attempt to navigate the intricacies of their tangled lives, but this was different. They weren't just two parents meeting, this was a confrontation tangled in years of anger, regret, and lingering affection. "You didn't tell me you were bringing a friend," Claire said slowly, her eyes darting to Sarah, measuring the significance of this unexpected meeting. Because it's not a big deal, Jake snapped, his patience waning. But maybe it should be, Gregory interjected, a gleam of amusement creeping into his eyes as he observed the unfolding drama. Jake bristled at his father's comment. This was not the time for petty jabs. He wondered if Gregory thrived on chaos, using the opportunity to exploit his son's vulnerabilities further. The thought infuriated him. The clash of familial expectations and personal boundaries felt insurmountable. Let us not turn this into a circus, he warned, steeling himself against the blend of emotions threatening to engulf him. Then let us talk privately, Claire proposed, her gaze unwavering. You and I have things to discuss. About what? How you left. How you stopped being in Emma's life. Jake felt the familiar anger boiling in his chest. Protecting Emma had been his sole focus for years, and the eruption of past wounds felt like a betrayal to all he had built. Jake, I know I've made mistakes. I want to do better for Emma, Claire said, her voice softening. But Jake was no longer that young man caught between love and disappointment. He was a father, an independent one who had learned to withstand disappointment without flinching. The day he'd taken charge of Emma's life was the day he'd begun to understand the depths of his strength. Your apologies are no good without actions to back them up, he said pointedly. He sensed a shift in Sarah as she leaned closer, her presence grounding him amidst the turmoil. We're here to make our own decisions, Jake added, turning to Claire with resolve. You can't just walk back in and think everything will be fine. Claire gulped, the vulnerability in her expression revealing a layer of humanity Jake hadn't anticipated. Perhaps she wasn't entirely detached. Were there still sparks of care and concern somewhere beneath the surface? Let us not make this the focal point of your dinner, Sarah interjected gently, aiming to ease the tension. Jake and I were just catching up. Caught in this precarious moment, Jake glanced at Sarah, her steady gaze giving him hope. Was this the path that could lead to a new understanding, not just with Claire, but with himself? Unsure of the answer, he took a deep breath. The implications of this meeting could either build a bridge or raze it to the ground. The realization landed heavy on his shoulders, the facade of stability he clung to was crumbling before his eyes. Fine, he said, resolving to confront his past directly. We can talk. As Claire led the way to a more isolated corner of the diner, uncertainty prickled at Jake's skin. This was their chance, a chance for retribution, clarity, and maybe even healing. But as he glanced back at Sarah, he couldn't shake off the nagging feeling that not all wounds could be sewn shut. The moment was shifting. The stakes were rising. Would Jake's confrontation lead to long-needed healing, or were they fated to repeat the same cycles of hurt that had kept them apart for so long? He was about to find out. Jake followed Claire to a secluded booth, each step feeling weighted by his past. The air felt thicker, with shadows of their memories looming overhead. They sat down across from each other, the moment charged with palpable tension that seemed to vibrate with unspoken words. Jake, Claire began, her voice faltering slightly, I know that my presence is unwanted, but I want to try and make things right. For Emma and for you. Jake's instinct screamed caution. Making things right means more than just words, Claire. It's about showing up and remaining present, not just when it suits you. His heart raced but steadied as he remembered the countless conversations he'd had with Emma about honesty and authenticity. He couldn't allow himself to be swayed by nostalgia. I've thought about this for so long, Claire continued, her eyes glistening. I never meant to hurt you or Emma. I was lost. I'm different now. That's what everyone says, but change isn't just an empty promise, he shot back, his voice steadier than he felt. He was done with excuses and the emotional games that had intertwined their lives like a tangled ball of yarn. Claire leaned forward, her hands abandoned on the table. I've been working on myself. Therapy, education, trying to understand what happened. I want to fight for Emma. Jake felt something shift within him, a mix of anger and pity. Is that what this is? A fight? Because it's not a competition. Emma deserves a mother, not someone who flits in and out of her life depending on how they feel. You need to understand the boundaries I've set for her. Her expression mirrored his pain, reflecting corners of grief they both knew too well. You're right, and I haven't been a constant. But if you let me in, I can show you I'm ready to be part of her life, part of yours. A myriad of memories flooded his mind, Emma's laughter, her tears during difficult times, her unwavering belief in the goodness of people. It would be easy to succumb to the hope in Claire's plea. But the last thing he wanted to do was allow Emma to get hurt again. I don't trust you, Jake admitted, relishing in the cathartic release of the words. And I won't allow you to put her through that again. The weight of his conviction steadied him, anchoring him against the waves of uncertainty that threatened to pull him under. Tension settled like a thick blanket between them. Claire sighed, the frustration flickering in her eyes. I've made mistakes, yes. But I'm not the same person who walked away. I want to change, Jake. I'm asking for that chance. Jake leaned back, crossing his arms. This wasn't the place to make decisions. This was the first emotional strike in a long battle for Emma's heart. Yet the glimmer of possibility danced within him, tempting him to ease the walls he'd built up for years. Actions are louder than words, he reiterated, firm in his resolve. If you want a chance, you'll need to prove it. Emma's safety and stability come first. With each assertion, he could almost feel the foundations of his life shifting underfoot, stirring something he hadn't allowed himself to feel. Could he entertain the notion of reconciling with Claire while safeguarding Emma's well-being? Claire's face softened further, and an unexpected vulnerability radiated from her. I'm willing to do whatever it takes. Just give me this chance and I promise I won't disappoint you or Emma. Jake was left grappling with mixed emotions, a pang of pity contending with an instinctive need to shield. This exchange could mark the beginning of a new chapter or become another painful misstep. Just know, he replied slowly, weighing his words carefully, if you backslide, I won't hesitate to cut you out again. I've learned to protect my family. As the weight of their talk hung between them, the threads of their unresolved past began to unravel. Could he allow Claire a path into their lives? Was he ready to reconsider their shared history? As he considered the possibilities, something in the diner, a clatter of silverware, a ripple of laughter snapped him back to the present, reminding him of all that remained outside this charged conversation. He caught Sarah's eye across the room, her expression vivid with curiosity and concern. He wondered if she understood the tumult boiling within him. Did she see the man battling not only for his daughter's love but perhaps for his own heart as well? A new doubt crept in. Was this confrontation going to lead to Jane's reconciliation, or would it open the floodgates of a fate he had fought to avoid? The lines of past and future blurring, Jake knew one thing: the time had come to face his fears head-on. The question remained, would he emerge unscathed, or with only fragments of himself left to piece back together? Jake's gaze shifted back to Claire, who was now visibly struggling with her emotions. He remembered the woman he had once loved deeply, a person he thought had chosen them over her chaotic life. But the years had transformed their love into a monument of hurt, each brick formed from betrayal and disappointment. As he observed her, he couldn't help but feel a flicker of compassion, mixed with an overwhelming desire for self-preservation. Prove it, he reiterated, softening his stance just a bit. Show me how you've changed, and maybe, just maybe, I can let you in. How? Claire leaned in, a hint of desperation coloring her voice. I need to know what it will take to show you I'm serious. Her readiness to engage ignited a sense of responsibility within him. This wasn't just about them anymore. It was about Emma, the child who had already been defined by the wounds of this fractured family. What Jake wanted more than anything was to see her flourish without the looming shadows of adult complications, without the regrets of their shared past. Start by being consistent. Show up for Emma regularly, he said decisively. And commit to professionals. If you truly want to change, let them guide you through this. It's going to take both time and effort. I won't have her slipping back into another cycle of abandonment. With every word, Jake felt a blend of fear and determination. He was laying down the law not just for Claire, but also for himself. Each articulation of his expectations was another step toward bridging the gap he had constructed to combat previous wounds. Claire nodded, absorbing his words like a sponge, her expression shifting from desperation to determination. I can do that. I'll meet with a therapist, I'll start taking responsibility. I know I need to show you that I'm committed. Good, he said, feeling the tension begin to thaw. But realize that this isn't a guarantee for reconciliation. I want to make promises I can't keep either. He felt a slight easing of his grip on the defenses he had permitted to control him for far too long. He looked around the diner again, pinching the edges of the booth as a reminder of the steady, yet shaky ground he was treading. Jake had focused on the principles that served as his fortress. But now, in the haze of uncertainty, a part of him whispered that perhaps, just perhaps, he could allow for a small window of grace. The question was the reason why he felt this crumbling facade shift ever so slightly. As if sensing his inner wrangling, Claire added, "This has hurt Emma, and I never wanted that. I want a chance to be the mother she deserves." The sincerity in her voice struck a chord, yet Jake pressed down any burgeoning sense of sympathy. Painfully honest acknowledgement was not enough, actions had to pave the way forward. With a deep breath, Jake spoke the words that had congealed in his throat. "All right, Claire. Let us see if we can take this one step at a time. I'm wary, but I understand the importance of second chances. Just don't let Emma down again." Claire smiled faintly, hope creeping into her gaze. Jake then felt the weight of Sarah's stare, still lingering from across the room. Was he making the right decision? Emma's laughter rang in his mind, breaking through his mental assertions. Would he allow the echoes of a broken past to shape a fearful future for his daughter? He stood up, the resolve eclipsing remaining doubts, ready to confront the messy path that lay ahead. The enormity of the risk started forming a cautious optimism. Let us get back to Emma. Fragmented or whole, she deserves to be surrounded by honest intentions, he said, pushing the booth's boundary a little wider, choosing to include Claire in their world for now. But he held tightly to the resolve that he wouldn't hesitate to protect his daughter's heart. As he walked toward the exit, shadows from the past intermingled with glimpses into a new beginning. Jake knew that the road ahead was fraught with uncertainty, but this moment felt like a pivotal turn, a chance to redefine not only their family dynamics, but also his own rigidity. In the back of his mind, a gnawing thought stirred uncomfortably. Would Claire's commitment to change be enough, or would he once again find himself grappling with the wreckage of broken promises? The thought sent tingles of anxiety through him as they stepped outside into the fading sunlight, ready to embrace a fresh chapter. But as he glanced down at Emma's joyous expression, illuminated by the twinkling streetlights of possibilities and dangers alike, Jake realized he would have to face more than just Claire. New challenges, perhaps more daunting than anticipated, lurked beyond the shadows. Would they be ready to confront whatever lay ahead? Jake's determination had set a course, yet the uncertainty of their collective future loomed heavily over him. As they approached the car, his heart raced with conflicting emotions. Emma, blissfully innocent to the weight of adult decisions, hopped into her booster seat, her laughter echoing like a siren call. It was then that Jake felt an unexpected pulse of yearning. There might be a glimmer of hope for their family, but only if he managed to navigate the turmoil that lay ahead without succumbing to the familiar despair. He climbed into the driver's seat, stealing a sidelong glance at Claire, who appeared lost in thought. Her face, once so familiar, now displayed a mixture of regret and resolve. Behind that weary countenance lay the remnants of the woman he once idolized, a truth that felt both comforting and jarring. Jake took a deep breath and started the car, the engine's hum breaking the silence, sealing their heavy hearts. With each turn of the steering wheel, Jake recognized the fundamental shift occurring within him. The rigid walls he had built started to buckle, a whisper of vulnerability fluttering in his chest. He had spent so many years perfecting his fortress, cultivating a silent anguish for the sake of self-preservation. But what would it truly mean to extend grace, to soften his guard without blurring the lines of his convictions? He could feel Claire's gaze on him, and Jake's resolve wavered slightly. They had spent years inflicting pain on one another, but perhaps now, after all the turmoil, there lay a chance for reconciliation, however improbable. It wasn't just about them anymore, it was about Emma's stability. Could he really trust her again? Do you want to join us for dinner? he asked abruptly, the words leaving his mouth before he could consider the implications. He felt a twinge of panic at the question. Claire was still an unknown variable in all of this, yet the thought of excluding her seemed counterproductive and, truthfully, inherently selfish. "What do you think, Emma?" Claire turned her eyes toward the girl, who lit up as she nodded enthusiastically. "Can we? Please?" Emma's excitement dissolved some of the tension hanging thick in the air. Jake swallowed hard, feeling the realization that this wasn't merely an invitation but a tethering of lives. "All right then, let us go." The journey to the restaurant was filled with small talk, weaving through their shared history while carefully avoiding the jagged edges. As they sat down at a quaint table adorned with a flickering candle, Jake surrendered to the moment, allowing his analytical thoughts to retreat temporarily. But as Claire began to recount stories of her struggles with her past, the late nights, the regret, the words twisted in his gut. It felt like he was digging through a wound that had barely begun to heal. This was not the conversation he had anticipated, grappling all the while with the fear that speaking openly about her past could anchor them down into familiar darkness. Her candidness, however, sparked something within him. Jake realized she was not just an ex-wife seeking redemption but a woman desperate for a second chance both for her and for Emma. Yet he remained caught in the crossfire of his skepticism, unsure if her vulnerability was genuine or a learned behavior masked by desperation for acceptance. "I can't promise you anything," he said finally, summoning his courage. "It's all a work in progress, you know. Our past is messy, and we've both made mistakes. But if we're going to do this, we have to be honest, really honest." Claire met his gaze, her own vulnerability knitted with a newfound determination. "I'll do whatever it takes, Jake. I want to create a solid foundation for Emma. I've already started therapy, and I'm committed to the process." Her acknowledgement of personal responsibility sent ripples of intrigue through him. Within the chaos of their discussion, he found a pathway opening that led toward forgiveness not solely for her but for himself as well. As dessert plates were cleared, and laughter bubbled up from Emma, Jake felt a spark of hope flourishing amidst the remnants of their fractured past. Perhaps this was indeed the first step toward rebuilding trust. But as the night wore on, an unsettling question loomed. Would they be able to navigate the turbulence ahead, or would the specters of their shared history weave a new tapestry of pain? He thought back to his earlier insights about vulnerability and found himself spiraling into the unknown. The narrative was changing, and the risks they faced were not limited to just the two of them. And as they headed back to the car, he realized the real challenge awaited: the confrontation with his own fears and the pivotal decisions that would reflect his evolving values. What awaited him next, he wondered. Would facing Claire's aspirations challenge his own vision for their family? Jake couldn't foresee the unfolding saga, but one thing was clear: they had only just begun to confront the depths of their journey. And perhaps the most daunting revelation was the hidden truths he would soon discover about himself. Jake's hand gripped the steering wheel tighter, knuckles pale against the approaching evening's shadows as he pulled away from the restaurant. Emma's laughter still echoed in his mind, a chiming reminder of innocence untarnished. Yet, the warmth that enveloped him felt thin, a temporary distraction from the storm brewing inside. Navigating this newfound dynamic with Claire was like walking a tightrope. One misstep could send him tumbling back into a familiar abyss. As they drove, Emma chattered animatedly about her favorite dessert, unaware of the emotional upheaval simmering beneath the surface. In those moments, Jake felt a surge of gratitude for her uncomplicated optimism, a stark contrast to the complicated dance of emotions playing out in the front seat. He glanced at Claire, who seemed reflective, her eyes cast toward the window, where the night unfurled before them like a dark tapestry. "Emma," Jake said, his voice encouraging her to share, "what was your favorite part of today?" Emma's excitement erupted: "The ice cream sundae. And I love that I got to spend time with both of you." Claire turned to Jake, meeting his eyes for just a moment. In that brief exchange, an unspoken agreement hung in the air. Emma was their beacon, illuminating the path before them, still so young yet wise enough to recognize what they could not articulate. Jake wondered if this dinner had planted a seed in both Claire and himself. Was he ready to water it, or would his apprehension drown it before it could sprout? As they neared home, his thoughts spiraled back to Claire's revelations about her therapy progress. The image of her vulnerability lingered at the back of his mind. A wave of conflict washed over him. Those confessions had ignited a spark of compassion, yet also stoked the fires of skepticism he had long relied on. Was this commitment genuine or merely born from desperation? The stakes felt high, and Jake found himself questioning not just her intentions, but his own. Pulling into the driveway, he hesitated, the engine still purring softly. His heart raced, a mixture of fear and anticipation surging forth. What did it mean to be open? To forgive? With every moment that passed, he realized his own walls were giving way, and the idea of letting go terrified him. "Do you really think we can do this, Claire?" he finally asked, unable to suppress his urgent need for clarity anymore. Claire turned to face him, her expression steady yet pleading. "I believe we can, if we're both willing to confront our fears and trust each other. I need you to trust me, Jake." The weight of her request hung thick between them, forcing him to confront his own vulnerabilities. Was trust a conundrum he could unravel? The instinct to protect himself from disappointment pressed heavily on his chest, yet in the depths of his mind, another truth lingered. The desire to foster a stable environment for Emma was becoming an increasingly pressing motivator, a commitment he didn't want to sacrifice. "I've started looking at my past mistakes not as chains but as lessons," Claire continued, her voice steady. "We can build something new from that." Her words pierced through his defenses, forcing him to reflect deeply on his own lessons learned. As he replayed the moments leading to today, he realized he had a choice. Rebuilding would require immersion in discomfort, the kind that clawed at the edges of his comfort zone. What would he discover if he finally let the walls slip away? With a deep breath, Jake felt a shift inside him, a sliver of hope pushing through the chasms of doubt, daring to contrast the shadows of their shared history. "You're right. We can't drag our baggage into this. If we're going to make this work, we need a clean slate." Claire nodded, her expression shifting from uncertainty to earnestness, and for the first time, Jake truly saw the intensity of her commitment. As they opened the car doors, stepping into the night air, the path ahead became less shrouded in shadows and more illuminated by the flickering glow of possibility. Had they just taken a decisive step toward familial healing, or was it merely the swirling mists of naivete entwining their thoughts? Jake realized they stood on the precipice of something momentous, but beneath the surface, a tumultuous sea of emotion simmered. Could they navigate through the complexities of their past, or would the ghosts inevitably pull them back down? The real confrontation was not only with Claire but with himself. As they stepped inside, each heartbeat echoed around him, a reminder that the moment for deeper exploration was drawing nearer. The biggest questions loomed just out of reach, but Jake felt the urge to face them. How far would he go to embrace transparency and vulnerability both with Claire and himself? A stirring uncertainty lingered. Would courage lead to redemption, or was it merely an invitation for heartbreak? The house felt both familiar and foreign as Jake crossed the threshold. It was the same place where laughter filled the air, yet now it existed in a charged silence, laden with unspoken words and hesitations. The flickering fluorescent light in the kitchen cast stark shadows on the walls, amplifying the tension in the atmosphere. He watched Claire pause by the doorway, her expression an open book that he was terrified to read. "Let us put Emma to bed first," she suggested, her voice steady but layered with urgency. Her proposal was practical, yet he sensed it was also a tactical step. Was she trying to shield their daughter from the weight of their conversation, or was this a way to prepare the ground for their own discussions? Jake nodded, not trusting his voice to respond adequately. Their steps echoed as they ascended the staircase, each creak an ominous reminder of past arguments that had reverberated in these very halls. Emma was already in her pajamas, her warmth radiating innocence that seemed to momentarily dissolve the tension they were weaving. As he tucked her in, Emma's face lit up, her small hand reaching up to grasp his. "Daddy, can we have ice cream again tomorrow?" Jake smiled. It was a simple request, but in that moment, it felt like an anchor to a reality where everything could still be uncomplicated. He never wanted to let go of that smile, but as he looked at Claire, her eyes reflected both vulnerability and determination. He braced himself for what was to come. Once Emma was settled, they retreated to the living room, a space where they had shared so much joy but which now felt like a battleground. Silence hung like a dense fog, neither knowing how to begin. Finally, Jake broke through the stillness. "I don't want to do this halfway," he said, surprising even himself with the rashness of his own words. He didn't want to waffle between fear and hope anymore. "If we're going to try, it has to be real." Claire's gaze sharpened, her posture shifting as if bracing for impact. "Agreed. But real means facing our fears. We can't pretend everything's okay." He felt the heat of her intensity. "What are you afraid of?" "Being vulnerable again," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "What if this doesn't work out? What if we hurt Emma in the process?" The rawness of her confession was a mirror reflecting his own fears. He found himself questioning his resolve. Could he truly dive into the depths of honesty without drowning in the emotional turmoil? "I'm scared too," he confessed, his heart racing. "What if I'm not enough?" With her brow furrowed, Claire closed the distance between them. "That's the point, isn't it? Embracing who we are now, not who we used to be. It's about being okay with our flaws and trusting each other to navigate through them." Jake marveled at her strength, a silvery thread of hope woven through the tension. He understood her words in a new light. Perhaps stepping into vulnerability might lead to startling revelations, not just for Claire but also for himself. "Then let us make a pact," he said, capturing the moment. "Let us commit to exploring this, no matter how scary it feels." Claire nodded slowly, her eyes reflecting shimmers of understanding. "Together, then." The shift felt palpable, the air thick with the promise of possibility. Jake felt a surge of resolve. It was a commitment etched not just in words but in shared determination. Yet just as a small flicker of hope ignited, his mind flashed with doubt. Would this earnest venture expose deeper fractures? As he drew a breath, he considered the peppering uncertainties ahead. What if honesty laid bare scars he wasn't ready to confront? As they stood on the cusp of this new journey, a chasm still yawned, filled with the shadows of their past selves. Each heartbeat was an invitation to embrace transparency over trepidation, leaving them both vulnerable on the brink of change. Was he ready to unearth the truths buried deep within, not only for the sake of their rekindled connection but for his own salvation? The weight of the future pressed against him, the thrill and terror of vulnerability dancing in place of certainty. The moment beckoned. It was time to see what lay beneath the facade, but would the revelation be one of triumph or tragedy? Jake stared into the dimly lit room, his heart a cacophony of conflicting emotions. With each breath, he felt the air thick with potential and uncertainty. The conversation with Claire had opened a door to a realm of vulnerability, but he couldn't shake the fragility of that newfound connection. He had spent years putting on facades, adopting a smile that shielded him from the truth lurking just beneath the surface. What might happen if they dismantled those defenses? His thoughts swirled, circling around the unspoken agreements they had made to navigate the tumultuous waters of their relationship. Could he truly allow himself to be seen, to be heard in all his flaws? It had been far easier to exist in the safe confines of his roles as a father and a husband, masked in duty and routine. But now, as he stood on the precipice of a potential return to intimacy with Claire, he felt both exhilarated and terrified. "Take the plunge," a voice in his head urged, reminding him what was truly at stake, not just their relationship, but the emotional inheritance they would pass down to Emma. Would he be the architect of a legacy built on raw honesty, or would he dissolve into the shadows of fear, allowing another chance for connection to slip away? He glanced toward the window, looking out into the dusk that blanketed their neighborhood. It struck him then that taking that leap was not just about Claire. It was also about him uncovering his own truths and discovering parts of himself he had buried in the ashes of their past. He had spent years trying to meet expectations, his own aspirations unwoven by self-doubt. It was time to confront those demons. "I need to talk about something," Jake said, his voice cutting through the silence like a serpent through grass. He watched as Claire's expression morphed from apprehension to curiosity. "Not just us, but me. I've realized that I've held back a lot from myself." Her brow furrowed, but there was a spark in her eyes, the tentative hope that they could unearth layers of themselves that had long lain dormant. "What do you mean?" "I've been so focused on what I thought I should be, what it meant to be a good father and a reliable partner, that I forgot to check in with what I want," he admitted, taking a step toward her. "I think I have dreams, passions, but they've been stifled in all this trying to be perfect." He wrestled with the emotions that flooded him at the admission. It felt like acknowledging a wound he had been treating with just a band-aid. Vulnerable and exposed, Jake cracked open his heart a little further. "I want to explore those things," he continued, the urgency in his voice rising. "But I also want you and Emma to know me in my entirety. Not just the version that fits neatly into the role of dad or husband." Claire's gaze softened, and the tension in the room shifted as if a weight had lifted. "I want that too. I want to embrace both of us, the good and the messy parts." There it was, the fragile thread of understanding stretching out before him. It was a lifeline pulling him closer to the surface, helping him navigate a course towards authenticity. Yet, another voice nagged at him, reminding him that self-discovery didn't come without its own repercussions. What if unearthing their truths meant questioning the foundations of everything they had built? "I can't help but wonder," he said softly, "if digging deeper will unearth things we're not ready to face. If it might hurt Emma, like you said." She nodded, her expression contemplative. "True, we have to be careful. But we also owe it to ourselves and her to try. What good is a relationship without honesty?" The realness of her statement hung in the air between them. Jake knew that honesty could lead to growth, but it was equally possible that it could expose fractures that they had carefully concealed. Just as he was starting to feel the thrill of possibility, a wave of trepidation washed over him. What if they ventured too far into the unknown and lost sight of the path back? "I think we can do this together," Jake ventured, his voice steadying with renewed conviction. "But I need more time to process everything. It feels overwhelming." "Take your time," Claire replied gently. "We're in this for the long haul." As night enveloped the world outside, Jake pondered the journey they were committing to. He realized he would have to confront the shadows of his past bravely, but part of that meant relinquishing control over the outcome, a nerve-wracking prospect that both thrilled and terrified him. As the night wore on, he settled into a contemplative silence, weighing the possibilities of their path ahead. But what Jake didn't foresee was the unexpected visitor that would soon challenge everything he thought he knew about himself and reshape their lives yet again. Jake stood at the brink of transformation, the air around him electrified with possibilities. The journey with Claire, fraught with uncertainty, had illuminated layers of his identity previously hidden away. Each candid discussion peeled back the facades he had carefully crafted over years, allowing him to see himself differently, not only as a father but also as an individual capable of ambition and vulnerability. As the weeks unfolded, Jake embraced the tenets of personal growth he had long neglected. He committed to reviving his own passions, rekindling his love for teaching and mentoring young minds. Enrolling in evening classes brought dormant ambitions to life, and as he engaged deeper with educational methodologies, he felt an old flame ignite within him. No longer was he simply a father, he was a scholar, an advocate for learning, and most importantly, he was reclaiming his sense of self. Conversely, Clara matched his stride, attending therapy and redefining herself, with each session unearthing layers of accountability. They began to build a rhythm together, allowing clear communication to guide their interactions. Claire's commitment to show up for Emma became more than just a promise, she became a steadily evolving presence in her daughter's life. Their shared dinners transitioned from awkward encounters to woven tales of laughter and aspirations that resonated throughout their home. During one such dinner, laughter echoed through their shared space as Emma excitedly shared stories from school, her words bubbling over with enthusiasm. Jake glanced at Claire, who caught his eye and offered a warm, reassuring smile. The moment struck him, they were not simply coexisting anymore, they were creating a solid foundation for their daughter and themselves. In that same temporal breath, the shadows that had once dictated his life's narrative began to fade into nothingness. The chance for personal evolution culminated one Thursday evening when Jake stepped onto the stage of his old high school, now as an invited guest speaker. He spoke passionately about resilience, about learning from mistakes, and about finding balance in the chaotic symphony of life. In the sea of young, eager faces, he no longer saw the boy who feared he was not enough. He saw a man reborn, standing tall. Their applause resonated through him like a symphony, affirming the nobility of his struggles and triumphs alike. Claire watched from the front row, radiating pride as Jake enveloped a newfound confidence, something he never imagined could exist alongside vulnerability. The lightness that enveloped him felt foreign yet comforting. At that moment, he conquered not only the fear of failure but the fear of being unworthy. Returning home that evening, he felt the weight of the day lift from his shoulders, allowing room for clarity and renewal. Their conversation flowed effortlessly, unmasking nerves and fears alike. "I never realized talking about my struggles could feel so liberating," Jake disclosed as they settled into the couch, Emma perched between them, her innocence juxtaposed against their evolving exploration of adulthood. Claire nodded knowingly. "It's not just about moving forward, it's about understanding the past. I know I have to keep proving my commitment to Emma and to you." "Your actions have spoken volumes," he replied, his tone earnest. "And what we've built together means the world to me." Jake curved his arm around Emma, feeling the warmth and enchantment of their family unit breathe life into his spirit. The tranquility spread through him as he reflected on his journey towards growth. He stood resolute in his ambition, fueled by the support of a mother who was willing to change, and a daughter who inspired him unconditionally. In that quiet embrace, Jake felt an overwhelming swell of pride. He was not merely grappling with the past, he was emerging victorious from it. He had transcended the boundaries of expectation and stepped into a realm of hope and clarity. He was more than just a survivor, he was an architect of his own happiness. Building connections that honored both his and his family's evolution. Through the challenges and heartaches, Jake had unearthed resilience that sprouted beneath the rubble of grief and uncertainty. Now entrenched in his newly defined identity, he made a silent promise to himself, to never lose sight of the power of authenticity. As they settled into a comfortable quietude, a sense of security enveloped them, signaling the dawn of a new era. They were ready to forge ahead, not as fragments of their past selves but as a cohesive family, determined to navigate whatever obstacles life might present. This unique narrative was punctuated with resolution and an undeniable realization: Jake was finally at the helm of his life, equipped to confront anything that lay ahead. And this was just the beginning. You need to subscribe now to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories that inspire transformation. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and show your support for real growth. Comment your reactions and thoughts about this emotional conclusion and share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this life-changing story. Don't wait even one more second to support the journey of overcoming struggles.